The lights dim as the camera moves slowly across a silent theater. Every velvet seat is empty except one, placed gently in the center of the front row, facing the grand stage. A single spotlight falls on that seat, as if waiting for someone who will never return. A hush spreads across the room, the kind of quiet that doesn't come from the absence of sound, but from hearts that don't know how to beat normally anymore. A man walks onto the stage, not with the confidence of someone who has performed all his life, but with the weight of someone carrying a memory on his shoulders. His footsteps echo, each one a reminder of the void left behind. That man is Denzel Washington. His eyes are calm but not cold. They are wet but not weak. He is the kind of man who knows how to stand tall while grieving. He faces the audience, but he doesn't speak yet. He lets the silence settle. He lets the world understand that tonight is not a performance. Tonight is a farewell. Somewhere in the air, you can almost feel the presence of the man this tribute belongs to, a man whose imagination bent reality, whose words danced when spoken, whose laughter filled green rooms, and whose ideas filled entire worlds. Denzel inhales slowly, as if gathering every memory he ever shared with him. When he finally speaks, his voice is warm, deep, and trembling with sincerity. I once asked him, Denzel begins, how he wrote worlds so alive they felt like dreams with beating hearts. He pauses, remembering the moment, and he smiled like he always did before saying something sly. He said, Denzel, my boy, I don't write worlds, I write doors. It's the audience who chooses to step through them. The audience chuckles gently, not because the line is funny, but because it sounds exactly like something he would have said. A playful mind, a wise spirit, a magician with words who made the impossible seem effortless. Denzel continues, he taught me that brilliance doesn't have to shout. It can whisper, it can tiptoe, it can be gentle. His voice cracks slightly, but he doesn't hide it. And he taught me that art is not about being perfect. It's about being honest. The camera cuts to the audience, faces glowing in the dim light, eyes fixed on the stage, breaths held unconsciously. They aren't watching a speech. They're witnessing a man unraveling memories that feel like tiny shards of beauty. There's something intimate about it. Like opening an old notebook full of unspoken thoughts, Denzel turns slightly, looking toward that empty seat in the front row. You were one of the rare ones, he says quietly, almost like a private conversation being overheard by thousands. You once told me that stories survive longer than their authors, because stories are not bones, they are echoes. And echoes don't die. They simply travel. A soft murmur ripples through the room. The weight of his words settles in every chest. Denzel steps forward, placing his hand gently on the edge of the podium, grounding himself. I remember the first time I read one of his scripts. I thought to myself, how does someone think like this? Every sentence felt like it was carved rather than written. Every pause felt intentional, like a doorway to another thought. He smiles softly, the kind of smile that belongs to someone replaying a cherished memory. And when we finally met, I realized something. He wasn't writing from a pedestal. He wasn't writing from some high tower of intellect. He was writing from the ground, listening to people, watching life, noticing the tiny things most of us ignore. A soft breeze seems to move across the stage curtains, though the air is still. It feels symbolic, as if the universe itself is leaning in. Denzel walks slowly across the stage, running his fingertips lightly along a wooden table filled with pages, notes, glasses, a pen, items that feel like relics now. He once confessed to me, Denzel says, that he never knew if his stories were good. He said he only knew they were honest. And maybe that's why they touched so many lives, because honesty is rare, and he had it in abundance. The audience remains silent, completely absorbed. You know, Denzel says with a small laugh, he had this habit of rewriting the last line of any scene at least 10 times, and every time I asked him why, he'd say, because the ending decides what the heart remembers. Denzel looks up, his voice softening. Tonight, we try to remember everything. The lines, the laughter, the sparks of genius, the quiet moments he never talked about. Everything. A faint spotlight widens over the stage, revealing a backdrop made not of scenery, but of projected words, fragments of dialogue, sentences from plays, pieces of monologues that once shook audiences. They seem to float behind Denzel like constellations, glowing softly, timeless. He whispers, You changed the way we think. You changed the way we feel stories. You changed us." Then he lifts his head and speaks louder, addressing the audience with a solemn intensity. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is not about mourning. It is about gratitude. Gratitude for a mind that gave us magic. Gratitude for a voice that gave us truth. Gratitude for a man who believed that imagination could rebuild broken worlds." The audience breathes in deeply, as though collecting every bit of emotion in the air. Denzel looks toward the empty chair once more and says, "My friend, this world was better because you were in it." The lights slowly fade, leaving Denzel illuminated in a solitary beam, standing not as an actor, but as a friend saying goodbye. And that is where the story truly begins. Asterisk. The stage remains dim, but something has shifted. The air feels heavier, filled with memories that have just been spoken aloud. As the lights slowly rise again, a soft hum of distant orchestral strings fills the room. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, like the sound of a thought forming in the back of someone's mind. Denzel Washington stands still for a moment, letting the music settle, letting the story breathe. He walks toward the center of the stage, and as he does, a gentle glow appears behind him. It's a projection, not of words this time, but of an old backstage corridor filled with props and half-finished set pieces, the kind of place artists hide when they're searching for themselves. Denzel looks at it the way someone looks at an old photograph. "We used to walk that hallway," he says softly. "Both of us lost in our own heads. Him thinking about the next twist in a scene, and me thinking about how I'd ever do justice to the words he wrote." He chuckles under his breath, and he would always say, "Denzel, don't act my lines. Feel them, let them bite, let them bruise a little. Only then will they heal someone." The audience exhales, as though they have all been holding their breath. There is something deeply comforting in the idea that great art is born, not from perfection, but from vulnerability. Denzel continues, "He believed that stories weren't meant to be clean. He said life wasn't clean, so why pretend? He wanted the meannesses, the chaos, the contradictions, the things we hide from each other." He spreads his hand slightly, as though presenting the invisible threads of that philosophy. He wanted us to face ourselves. For a moment, the projection behind him shifts again, this time to a desk cluttered with open books, scattered pages, coffee cups, and a single lamp. The warm light glows like a lighthouse in a stormy sea. Denzel watches it with affection. "That desk," he says in a whisper filled with memory, "was where he lived more than anywhere else. I used to joke with him that he didn't write plays. He lived inside them. He'd laugh and say, 'Well, it's peaceful in there. People listen to me in my plays.'" A wave of soft laughter passes through the audience, gentle but full of warmth. Denzel sits on a stool placed at the edge of the stage, like someone settling in to tell a story not to a crowd, but to a circle of close friends gathered around a fire. "I remember the night he called me," Denzel says, "and said he had written something he wasn't sure anyone would understand. I told him, that's usually a sign that you've written something brilliant." He shakes his head, smiling to himself, but he didn't want brilliance. Not really. He wanted connection. He wanted people to walk out of the theater, feeling like they'd been cracked open in the best way. The projection behind him changes, again this time to a dim rehearsal room where two actors stand facing each other, scripts in hand, listening closely as a director gives notes. The lighting flickers slightly, recreating the atmosphere of long nights and endless retakes. He once said, Denzel recalls, "A stage is nothing but a mirror that talks back. We're not here to entertain, we're here to expose." And I asked him, "Expose what?" Denzel raises his eyebrows, as though reliving that moment of wonder. "The truth," he said. "Always the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." The room absorbs his words like dry earth drinking rain. Denzel's voice deepens. "There was a moment I'll never forget. We were sitting after a show, just the two of us, long after the audience had left. The theater was dark, except for one ghost light on the stage." He pauses, picturing it. He looked at that light and said, "You know what that is?" I joked, "A light you forgot to switch off." The audience laughs again, soft and familiar, but he shook his head. Denzel continues. He said, "No, that's the last actor on stage. It guards our stories when we're gone." Denzel closes his eyes for a second, letting the memory wash over him. And now, he says gently, that ghost light feels a little lonelier. A hush settles. The projection fades away, leaving only the stage and its solitary figure. Denzel rises from the stool, standing once again in the full glow of the spotlight. "You know," he says, "I've seen many great minds. I've worked with legends, geniuses, visionaries, but he was different. He had a child's curiosity with a philosopher's depth. He could take the smallest moment, a stranger's gesture, a line overheard on a bus, the way light fell on a window, and turn it into something unforgettable." Denzel lets out a breath that sounds like a sigh and a smile combined. One time he told me he wrote a whole scene because he saw two people arguing in a bookstore over the last copy of a novel. Just an argument. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, but he said the way they fought passionately but politely fascinated him. "There's a play in their politeness," he told me. The audience listens, their faces soft with admiration. Denzel's voice grows more emotional, though still steady. "He taught me that brilliance hides in ordinary places. You just need to be curious enough to look." He glances toward the empty chair again, and he always looked. A sudden gust of music swells again, strings rising in harmony with the beating hearts of everyone in the room. Denzel takes a slow step forward. "I think that's what made him so extraordinary. It wasn't that he wrote better than anyone else. It was that he cared more. He cared about the words, the pauses, the silences between dialogue. He believed those silences held secrets. He spreads his hands gently, and he cared about people. He cared about actors. He cared about the audience. He cared about every soul who ever sat in a theater seat and waited for a story to save them, even for a moment." His voice deepens again, thick with emotion. "He once told me that the world breaks everyone, every day, in small ways. But stories put us back together." Denzel swallows lightly, and he put so many of us back together. The music softens, leaving only the quiet, heavy air of the theater. Denzel looks around as if searching for the right words. The perfect words, the kind of words his friend would have rewritten 10 times. "I owe him more than I can ever express," he admits. "We all do." He steps back. The lights dim again, leaving him as a silhouette against the darkness. The stage breathes. The audience breathes. The world pauses. For a long moment, the stage remains almost completely dark. Only a faint halo of light outlines Denzel Washington's silhouette, as if the world is giving him a moment to gather the last. Most fragile pieces of memory he still holds close. Then, with a soft hum, the lighting rises again, warm, golden, gentle. Like morning sunlight entering a room where someone has just woken from a dream they wish they could return to. Denzel steps forward slowly, not with the stride of an actor hitting his mark, but with the quiet reverence of a man approaching a sacred place. His voice is softer now, not weak, but tender, as if the weight of everything left unsaid is resting in his chest. "There's something I never told him," Denzel begins, looking down at his hands for a moment before raising his gaze again. "I never told him that he changed the way I read, the way I listened, the way I breathed." He pauses and smiles gently. "He changed the way I lived." The audience does not move. They sit in stillness, as though any shift, any breath too loud, might disturb the fragile truth being spoken. Denzel continues, "People think greatness is loud. They think it's about being the center of the room, the loudest voice, the strongest presence." He shakes his head. But he was greatness made quiet, greatness made humble. He didn't walk into a room saying, "Here's what I've done." He walked in saying, "Tell me what you've seen." Denzel's eyes soften into a distant gaze, focused not on the audience, not on the empty seat, but somewhere beyond. "I remember one evening," he says, "we were sitting on a balcony after a rehearsal. The sun was going down, and he was talking about a scene he couldn't figure out. He said he didn't know how to make the moment honest." Denzel chuckles faintly. Imagine that, a man who made honesty feel like poetry. Worrying about whether something was truthful enough, he shakes his head, his smile full of affection. He cared so much, too much, sometimes. But that's what made him beautiful. The projection behind him flickers to life again, this time with a slow montage of empty backstage spaces, ropes, curtains, dusty chairs, forgotten props, spaces that once echoed with practice, with laughter, with the crackle of ideas being born. "He told me once," Denzel says quietly, "that theaters remember, that walls absorb emotion, that even when no one is rehearsing, even when no one is performing, something lingers." He believed every stage holds the ghosts of every story ever told on it. He looks around the theater as though seeing those ghosts now, and if that's true, he says softly, then this place, every place he ever touched, is full of him. The music swells again, deeper this time, resonant, like a heartbeat slowing but strong. Denzel's voice deepens. There were moments when I would watch him work, and it was like watching someone translate the language of the soul. He didn't write characters. He wrote human beings, flawed, funny, brilliant, broken human beings. He steps closer to the edge of the stage, lowering his voice, as if sharing a secret. And he told me the most important line he ever wrote wasn't one people quoted, wasn't one critics praised. It was a line nobody even noticed. Denzel closes his eyes. It was simple. It was soft. It said, "I hear you." He opens his eyes again. That was him. That was who he was. A man who heard people, really heard them, and wrote them into eternity. A hush falls across the room as Denzel turns slowly toward the empty chair again. The spotlight shifts slightly, illuminating the chair more clearly, a silent symbol of someone whose presence is felt, even in absence. If he were here, Denzel says, he'd probably hate all this. A ripple of laughter slips through the audience. He'd tell me I was being dramatic. He'd say, "Denzel, for God's sake, it's a tribute, not a Greek tragedy." He smiles through the ache. And then he'd write 5 pages about why we make tributes dramatic anyway. The music fades to an almost whisper, letting the quiet speak for itself. Denzel's expression grows more emotional now, not overflowing. "There's something I want to say about him," he murmurs. "Something that matters." The room leans in. He was kind. The simplicity of the word echoes louder than any poetic sentence could. Kind, purely, deeply, quietly kind. Denzel continues, "In a world obsessed with brilliance, he chose kindness. In a world chasing applause, he chose meaning. In a world that often forgets to stop, he paused. He breathed. He listened. The audience seems to breathe with him. Denzel's voice turns heavier, but stronger. He taught me that the measure of a man is not how loudly he speaks, but how deeply he is felt." A soft tear finally escapes Denzel's eye. Not dramatic, not staged, real, unhidden. He lets it fall. He doesn't wipe it away. He steps toward the empty chair, stopping just a few feet from it. He addresses it like it's a person. "You once told me that when the curtain falls, the story doesn't end. It just becomes memory." His voice trembles. "Well, you're a memory now, but you're not gone, not even for a moment." He takes a breath, steadying himself. "You will live in every actor who speaks with honesty, in every audience that leans forward, waiting for truth, in every young writer who believes that words can change the shape of the world." He nods slightly, as if acknowledging the presence he can no longer see. "And you will live in me, always." The music rises again, swelling like a final embrace, a final bow, a final echo of a voice that once filled theaters. Denzel turns back to the audience, his posture straight, his presence strong, his grief transformed into something luminous. "Tonight," he says, "we don't say goodbye. We say thank you. Thank you for the worlds you built. Thank you for the courage you gave us. Thank you for the truth you showed us." He places his hand over his heart. "And thank you for letting me walk through your doors." The lights dim once more, shadows stretching long across the wooden stage. The empty chair glows softly in the spotlight, as if the universe itself is bowing. The orchestra plays its final note, a single, long, trembling tone that fades into silence. Denzel steps back into the darkness. The spotlight closes. The stage goes black. But the echo of the tribute and the man it honors continues to live, breathing gently in every corner of the theater, refusing to disappear. The story ends. The memory doesn't